This episode of Film Learnin is brought to you by Wondershare Uniconverter. Hey dude, good news, I got a sponsor this week, so can you do me a favor and go out and check the studio, make sure it's, clean?
Stop worrying, the studio looks... On second thoughts, we might want to run a vacuum over this.
Hey guys, welcome to Film Learnin, the show dedicated to learning new some filmmaking and learning good. And that's right, we're finally doing an effect from Stranger Things. But before we get into that, let's talk about our sponsor. Guys, as we all know, there is a whole bunch of different video formats out there, and not all of them are always compatible with either your program or your device. And sometimes that can just leave you saying, "My God." Exactly, and that's where Wondershare Uniconverter is a Viking. With Uniconverter, you have the ability to convert videos to 1000 formats at 30 times faster speed without any quality loss. You can download, compress, edit, burn, transfer videos, add video metadata, and a lot more. Uniconverter also comes from Wondershare, who has been around for over 15 years. And if you've been around that long, you must be doing something right.
For 15 years now.
Having something like Uniconverter around becomes invaluable when you're importing a whole bunch of clips into either Premiere or After Effects, and suddenly it pops up that this format is not supported. You can easily just drop that into Uniconverter, convert it to a format that After Effects or Premiere actually likes, and you're back in editing in no time. So guys, if you want to check out Wondershare's Uniconverter, you can click either of the links below. So back to you, Grant, that's totally over there. Thank you, pre-recorded Grant, and thank you, Wondershare. So guys, today we're taking on the upside down effect from Stranger Things. Now I know there's a bunch of tutorials on YouTube about this effect, so I thought, what can I do that's a little bit different? And the answer ended up being 3D. So today we're going to be tracking a shot in 3D, jumping over to Cinema 4D with that exported 3D track, and adding a whole bunch of 3D elements to really get this shot looking awesome. Now in order to complete this effect, you just have to shoot your shot, really. Shoot whatever you want, I don't care. If you've got people in your shot, great. If you don't, even better. Now you'll also need to head to filmlearnin.com/downloads and grab the Stranger Things Upside Down Effects Pack, which contains a whole bunch of 3D assets and some demos of some awesome stock footage from Action VFX. Now as always guys, these are just demos of the Action VFX assets. If you want the 2K, 4K and sometimes 6K versions of these assets, you need to head to actionvfx.com. Discount code right there. Now I'm also utilizing a few different assets. I've got the burn textures, I've also got the film riot slime assets, and some awesome free lots from Filippo Cinotti. Now links to all that stuff are down in the description, so check those out and let's get to work, shall we? Okay guys, so here we are in After Effects and I've got my shot set up in a comp and all ready to go. So you can see if I run through a preview, we've got a decent amount of movement in this shot as I just grabbed the camera and roughly walked around. That's mainly just to demonstrate how we can add 3D elements to the shot to add depth. So let's get started. Firstly, we gotta track our shot, right? Yes, as this track is going to be the foundation for adding everything in later. So all we need to do is head over to the tracking controls and hit track camera. Now as always guys, if this isn't here, all you need to do is head up to window and find tracker. As you can see, it's tracking in the background now. And this is a fairly long shot in terms of tracking, so I'm just gonna, skip to the end. Okay, track is done. If we check out the error percentage, well, that's actually pretty low. So I'm happy with that and we can move on. But just a quick tip here. If you have an actor in your shot here or anywhere in this shot, mask them out completely before tracking, because if you don't, After Effects is going to try and track that person as well as the 3D space in your shot, and you're going to have a bad time. So mask out any actors or anything moving in your shot before you track it. Makes sense, right? So you can see I have a bunch of markers in 3D space throughout the shot now. So I'm going to create my camera by clicking this button right here, and we can move on from there. Our next step is to decide where we want our 3D vines to sit in this shot. So say we want some on the desk right here. We select our 3D camera, find a nice set of tracking markers that align our target to our desk like this. We can then right click and choose Create Solid. So this solid now represents our desk in 3D space. Now for me personally, I like the idea of going in here and adjusting the size and the shape of the solid to match the object in the scene, as this better allows me to add 3D objects into the scene in Cinema 4D because I have a better idea of the dimensions of that object. So after a little adjusting, we have this. Not bad, you can see that it now sticks to the desk for the entire shot. Now guys, you can go ahead and repeat this as many times as you like. Anywhere you want to add a 3D object or even a 2D object, add a solid to that area. Now I'm going to skip ahead until I'm done adding all the solids that I want to this shot. So you can see I've added quite a few solids to this shot, guys. But now it's time to get some 3D into the shot in Cinema 4D. To do that, we firstly have to render out the shot as an image sequence so we have a background plane. So let's do that. We'll head down and we're going to solo the footage layer like so. We're going to hit Ctrl M to add it to the render queue, click on lossless, and from the drop down menu, we're going to select PNG sequence. We'll designate a save location and hit render. Once that's done, let's export our project to Cinema. To do that, we go to File, Export, and Max on Cinema 4D Exporter. You'll get a pop-up saying all 2D layers won't get exported, and that's fine. That's just our footage layer. We don't need that, so just ignore that. Save that into a folder or wherever you want, and then let's open this up in Cinema 4D. Okay, so here we are in Cinema 4D. I've opened up our exported After Effects file, and as you can see, all our solids are here in 3D space, but they're kinda just floating there. We don't really have a sense of where things are in that 3D space, so let's head up and add a new background. From there, let's head down to the material browser right here and double click to add a new material. We'll then double click on said material to open it, and let's turn off reflection and let's open up color. All we want to do here is import our image sequence like so. We're then going to click on animation, click calculate, and it'll find the rest of the frames in our sequence. Now the last step here is we want to head down to the editor right here and check Animate Preview. Now if we drag and drop this material onto our background layer right here and hit the play button, you can now see our shot will play out with our solids populating the 3D shot just like in After Effects. We'll also head up to the Object Manager right here, and with our background layer selected, we'll head to Tags, Cinema 4D Tags, and add a compositing tag here, and just check off Scene by Camera, Cast Shadows, Receive Shadows, and Scene by Reflections, and Transparency. Basically, you just want to turn off everything you can. Now the reason you do this is because you don't want this thing showing up in your renders. So now we can bring in our 3D assets. Now gang, I will mention that I used a free plugin for Cinema 4D called Ivy Grower. This plugin actually grows branches and 3D ivy onto any surface you designate it to. So I've added some 3D geometry to my scene. For example, the desk here, I just used a basic cube that I fashioned into a rectangle desk shape. I then used the 3D ivy plugin to grow ivy over that 3D surface. And that's basically how I made the 3D ivy vine assets that are in the download pack. If you want to have a play with that, I'll leave a link to download it in the description. But for now, we're going to be importing the ivy that I made. Now guys, there's two different ways to import a 3D model from one project into another. One is to head up to File and hit Merge, and that will bring in the entire project. That means models, lights, textures, everything. In this particular situation, I don't really want to do that because I want to progressively import these models. And one thing that Cinema 4D does is it allows you to open up more than one 3D project file at any given time. So what I'm going to do is head to File, hit Open, and open our Branches Asset Pack. Here it is. So you can see it just looks like a whole bunch of dirty roots. Not that pretty. But what I plan on doing is say selecting this one here, hitting Control C to copy that, heading to Window, opening back up our footage 01 file here, and then I'm just going to hit Control V and paste that model in. Now I don't have to deal with 10 different models all chucked in one turn. I can just take my time and do this one at a time. We'll then decide where we want this to sit using the solids as our guide. I think I'll add this one to the desk. It's kind of a corner hanging off one. To do that, let's switch to multi-view mode and to top mode. We can then see the solid for our desk right here. So using the axis controls, let's move the branches over atop that solid. We can then switch back to perspective mode and see if that needs adjusting. Maybe a little this way. Be sure and use up all the viewports, gang. Just because it looks right in top-down mode doesn't mean it's going to look right in all of the different viewports. So your 3D object might be, say, too low or too high, and we can get it back here. That's the beauty of 3D, gang. You can look at a whole bunch of different angles and perfect your placement. So from there, gang, I'm just going to repeat that process and add a bunch more of these branch elements in this sped up footage, using the solids imported from After Effects to inform the geography of the shot. And this is the end result. You can see I have some foreground objects, some on the desk here, some over on the couch here, and the shelf. And I also have some coming along the back wall and the side wall. The best part is that we've developed this in 3D. So as we move the camera through the scene, all of our branches maintain parallax and depth. Something you can't really cheat without a lot of effort in 2D. So what now? Well, if you're in the full version of Cinema 4D, I would highly suggest turning off all those solid layers and rendering out these branches in sections. Now, a much less laborious way to do this is doing what I'm doing on screen right now. I'm selecting multiple models, then right clicking on them and hitting group object and then naming that object, say side wall or back wall or desk. That way you can actually turn off multiple models at one time. Now I've just skipped ahead and you can see the result of me doing that. I have a whole bunch of groups and I'm just going to turn them off one by one until I get to just the foreground layer. That way we can now render these out in sections. For example, the foreground one's here, then the desk, then the side wall over here, then the shelf, and finally the back wall. This will save your render times and give you added flexibility when you're compositing them together. For anyone using Cinema 4D Lite, I suggest this. Turn all the models off except for this, say, one section, say the foreground section. Then save a copy and name it foreground. Next, turn the foreground layers off and turn on the sidewall layers. Then hit save as and name it sidewall. You see what I'm doing? You see what I'm putting down here? You'll then be able to import and render these individual layers in After Effects without any fuss. So now we've sorted out our 3D branches. Let's head back to After Effects and put this all together. Alright, we're back in After Effects. I've imported my rendered 3D branches as well. Now for those of you using Cinema 4D Lite, you'll have to import your Cinema 4D project file into After Effects and drop them in a new comp in order to render them out like so. I would encourage you to render them out before you start compositing because your final shot is going to take forever to render if you don't, so trust me on this. So gang, all I'm going to do is drop each of these in the comp in the order they appear on screen. So foreground first, then sidewall, then desk, then shelf, then couch, and then back wall. Done. And right now they look pretty awful. So the first step to selling this as being in the shot is motion blur, gang. You'll see that everything else in the shot as we move through it is blurring during movement, and the 3D layers should be no different. So let's turn on motion blur for the comp, and then I'm going to use a paid plugin to add my motion blur. Now guys, I'm going to be using Real Smart Motion Blur, and if you don't have this, that's okay. You can easily use CC Force Motion Blur that is free inside After Effects, but I have Real Smart, which was expensive, and I think it gives a better result. So I'm going with that. Next, well, before we blend those layers, we need to tweak my actual footage since the upside down is very dark and my shot is quite bright. We have to fix that. So I'm going to add Colorista 4 and darken my highlights and my midtones and maybe desaturate this a little as well. If I turn it on and off, you can see the difference is pretty dramatic after only a minute or so. Now onto the branches. I'll add an instance of Colorista and blend them in a little better like so. Now gang, as always you can use whatever color grade plugins you like. As you know from watching the show, I love Colorista from Red Giant, it's my jam. So that looks pretty good. The next step is to use camera lens blur. At the moment we have our foreground branches and they are sharp as a tack. Yet they shouldn't be in focus since the sharpest part of our footage is the arcade cabinet, which is in 3D space roughly about a meter away. So let's increase the blur until we're happy. That's great. Now this foreground object moves out of frame pretty quick, so we don't need to animate that blur, but we will with others. So let's move on. Okay, so we've added all these effects to one layer. Now the cool part is we can simply copy and paste them to other layers one at a time and then adjust that blur to suit that particular shot. Now for example, the side wall here. For this shot, I want to adjust the blur amount because it's a little too much. From there, I'll hit the stopwatch on a mount and skip ahead on the timeline until the camera has moved ahead. Then I'll decrease the blur amount to compensate for the adjusted focal distance. We can then rinse and repeat these steps for the other layers. For example, the shelf here is out of focus at the start of the shot, so we'll hit the stopwatch there, and then as we move forward, it should come into focus a little bit more while still being a little bit blurred, so we'll decrease the blur amount. So it's simply a matter of animating the blur for all of those background layers as well. The end result looks like this. Not bad at all. Our 3D branches look awesome now, but let's keep going. Now you might see I have a little bit of a problem here. My sidewall branches and part of my desk here are popping in over my arcade cabinet. So to solve this, I quickly rotoscoped the arcade cabinet and rendered it out with an alpha channel. Now guys, for more info on rotoscoping, click the card above as I'm not going to cover it here. All we need to do is just place that rotoscoped arcade on top of our branch layers and bam, problem solved. Basically guys, the idea is if there's anything that's going to be in front of your branches, you need to rotoscope that out. Now it's time to add some more elements to better sell this effect. So let's add some slime. For this, I'm actually using the new Film Riot slime pack guys. It's a pretty decent pack for the $29 price tag. So I want to add some slime to say the arcade cabinet here. In order to attach the slime so it sticks to the cabinet, we need to create a solid to place it on. So let's select our footage layer, click on the 3D camera tracker, and then our markers show back up and we can add a solid to the top of the arcade the same way we're adding solids at the start of the episode. The only difference now is that with that solid layer selected, we're going to pre-compose it, name it arcade, and then we're going to make sure to leave all the attributes in this comp. We'll then open the comp up, add our slime asset, and then we can change the composition settings up here to better house our asset. I'll say increase the height like so, and make sure that it fits. Done. I'll also remove the black background by adding an unmult effect. Bam. If we head back now, you can see our slime looks better, but our alignment's off and the scaling's a little bit off too. So let's hit P and position our slime into place. One thing you don't want to do is mess with the Z axis, as this is going to stop it from sticking to the arcade. We'll then finish that off by turning on motion blur, and as you can see now, the slime is sticking to our arcade. Nice. In the final shot I did add a few more of these guys, but for the tutorial I'm just going to stick with just the one. Our next step is to add the particles swirling around the shot, and this is pretty easy actually. So in my project window I've got some assets from Action VFX called Falling Ashes that look very similar to the spores in Stranger Things. The guys did a great job with these. I'm going to grab that and drop it into my comp, and of course, make it 3D. Now you can see right away that it makes it smaller in the shot, so I'm just going to scale this up, and just like with our slime, I'll turn on motion blur. Right away that looks awesome. Turning on motion blur and having it in 3D space makes it look like it's reacting to the camera movement, which is pretty cool. But we do need some more particles, so what I'm going to do is duplicate it, stagger it in the timeline so it doesn't look like a duplicate. There we go. And then I'm going to push this one back in Z space like so. Now since the particle layer is further back in the frame now, we'll have to add some blur as, depth of field. I'm just going to head up and add an instance of fast blur and crank it up just a little. We'll then hit the stopwatch on amount. I'm then going to head forward on the timeline and just decrease that blur. Done. I'm then going to duplicate that again and just move it over in 3D space. The idea is we don't want any areas of the shot to be missing particles, so by adding several copies of this particle footage, we achieve that. The last thing I need to do is add some atmospheric fog, once again courtesy of Action VFX. I'm adding this the exact same way as the particles. Drop it in, make it 3D, and position it in 3D space. This is looking pretty awesome now, guys. The only thing that's lacking is that characteristic blue, basically the color grade from Stranger Things Upside Down Dimension. For that, I actually used a free Stranger Things LUT from a YouTuber called Filippo Cinotti. You can find a link to his video in the card above. Please drop by and show him some love in the comments because these really are awesome and they're free. To use that, all I did was drop an adjustment layer over everything, added Colorista, headed down the bottom and imported the LUT below. Now I did tweak it a little to suit my shot, but the end result looks like this. And that, my friends, is another effect. Done. Now I just want to address something before it goes down in the comment section. I know my final shot has a lot more stuff in it than in the tutorial. But the reason I didn't go over, say, the broken glass in the arcade cabinet, the slime on the TV, the slime on the chair, the big scorch mark on the cupboard right here, is because they were all done the exact same way as the slime I put on the arcade cabinet. I created a solid in 3D space, pre-composed it, and then I dropped the asset in and then blended it in. It was already a really long tutorial, so I decided to cut that part out. So, there you have it. Add up all of those steps and you get something like this.
What's up, dude?
Hey dude, good news, I got a sponsor this week, so can you do me a favor and go out and check the studio, make sure it's clean?
Stop worrying, the studio looks... On second thoughts, we might want to run a vacuum over this.
So guys, that's my take on the Stranger Things Upside Down effect from seasons 1, 2, and 3, which I haven't seen yet. Now I know watching through the tutorial and seeing all those steps might seem overwhelming, but it is actually a relatively easy effect, it just has a lot of steps. So with a bit of time and a little bit of patience, you can make an awesome looking shot. And for anyone who's interested in that Stranger Things title card that I put up, that is actually a free template from YouTuber Trey Bennett. So click the link in the description and check that out for yourself. He's actually made free templates for all 3 seasons. So once again, click that link in the description and check it out for yourself. It is really easy to work with. But for now guys, that is all I got for you. If you did enjoy the video, please smash that like button. I really do appreciate it and it does help out. If you have a request, make sure you drop it in the comments below. And hey, if you are new here, hit that subscribe button below and turn that notification bell on so you don't miss a single Film Learnin episode. We've got a lot of cool stuff coming up, so stay tuned for that. I've got 2 other episodes right over here, or maybe a playlist, I'm not sure. I've also got all my social media crap over here with the Patreon as well if you want to help support the channel, which really does help out. And hey, if you want to support us directly on YouTube, you can click that join button below or check out some merch. But until I see you again guys, keep learning.